Hi, this is Joseph Arthur. Thanks for checking out Come to Where I'm From. Please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/come to where I'm from. We are an independent podcast, and any contributions you can make are greatly appreciated. Hey, Bob.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good. Finally good to be here.
Good to see you. Yeah, we were just talking about NFTs. Are you familiar with those yet?
No, what's that?
Non-fungible tokens.
Non-what?
Non-fungible tokens. It's going to
Is that
change
money?
your life, Bob. I'm so glad I get to tell you about this.
Is that money?
It's so much money, and for you, it's going to represent an enormous amount of money.
Where is it?
It's already surrounding you. You're literally sitting on a pile of gold.
He doesn't need money.
But get this guy's number. We got.
Hey, listen. No, what it is it's selling. It's a boon for artists of all walks of life: musicians, painters, photographers. And
in what way?
In the way that you sell your work on the blockchain, basically. So you tokenize your work. So like your famous picture of Tina Turner that I can't believe isn't like a double exposure. I just found out. That's crazy.
No, that's one picture.
That's crazy. But we'll get there. But
okay.
So take that photo.
Well, we've been talking. I mean, people are talking about blockchain. And the whole point is that you have a unique number that identifies that item. Mm-hmm. Problem is, I still need a customer.
Oh, but I
don't need to identify the item. I need somebody to buy it.
Oh, but there's okay. The customers.
Bring me a customer. We'll talk about how they identify it.
Okay. Well, the customers are erupting now in that space because people want to collect, right? They like collect Pokemon cards for $1 million or whatever. So they want to collect non-fungible tokens now because everybody wants to keep everything in their virtual world. They don't want to deal with a bunch of stuff, you know. But so there's
well, then they're not buying my prints. They're buying a number.
They're buying a representative. Buying.
Where's the print then?
It's in there. It's a JPEG. A JPEG just sold for $100,000 a gifted, and another JPEG sold for $6.6 million this week.
Why?
Bob, I don't know why, but it happened. And then
it's like selling air. You know?
Well. It's selling.
So easily
it's selling a representative of your intellectual property on the blockchain, and it's a one of one.
But it's not.
People
like JPEG is so easily reproduced.
No, but anybody can reproduce the image, but only one person owns the token that represents that image. And by the way, I'm just learning about this too, so I'm.
You know what? I got granddaughters that might be interested in this.
No, but it's so good
They're
for you.
They're going to be in that world.
It's so good. It's so good for them.
I'm old enough to say. I'm not doing that.
I know at first it's scary and doesn't make sense.
No, it does make sense. It's just not for me. I'm not interested.
It's so for you, Bob. Oh my God, is it for you?
I'm way too busy trying to do the old way.
Yeah, but here's what's great about it is it doesn't interrupt the old way in any way, shape, or form.
Oh, good.
It works in tandem, so it's just this other layer of value over everything we've been doing this whole time. It's basically like the myth of the starving artist is going bye-bye. It is, because they're I'm telling you.
You heard it from him first.
From your mouth to God's ears. Right?
Exactly.
I'll let you know.
You heard it here
exactly.
first. Show me.
Yeah. Show you. Well, this is amazing. Right place, right time.
Right.
The life of a rock and roll photographer. I love the cover.
Yeah, it took a long time to put it together and get all the right pieces, but I'm really very proud of it.
Yeah.
I like the way it came out. I like the way it looks.
Yeah, I love it.
It's very simple, but it's in your, very bold.
Yeah, are you doing
that? Is me back then. I was it's in an airplane bathroom. I was on my way to Japan with Kiss when I took that picture in the mirror.
The early selfie. Before selfies were a thing.
But they didn't have that word.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the best photographs I've ever taken of myself are in airport bathrooms.
Yeah, well, it's just you in the mirror. There's not much else.
You in transition.
Yeah, and you got a lot of time, Yeah. So.
Or even airplane bathrooms. You ever take selfies in those?
Yeah, in the airplane. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's in the airplane?
That's in the airplane. Yeah,
Oh, that is in the plane.
Yeah, no, Ohio.
And the Kiss plane, Pop.
We're high over the earth up there. I'm like flying over Alaska or something.
With Kiss, Gene Simmons. Yeah. Gene Simmons is into non-fungible tokens. I can guarantee you that.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's into money.
Yeah. So, how did you get going on this whole journey? Like, it started with Ike and Tina Turner, right?
Yeah, I learned photography from my mother when I was very little. It was her hobby. She was actually an attorney. And growing up, I was the family photographer. And then after school, I kind of tended to want to drop out, turn on, tune in, and drop out.
Yeah.
And I lived with a rock and roll band. But then a friend said we had to go see Ike and Tina Turner, that they were amazing. And
which rock and roll band did you live with?
Well, they changed names every time they changed drummers. It started out being called the Justice League. Then I think they were the Pop Art, the Dave Heenan set. There's a couple of different names. Anyway, they ended up as the Glitter House. And as they were about to break up, the last, kind of like the typical story, they broke up and they got one last gig. It was twice as much money as they ever got. It was actually $75, So Bob Crew discovered them. He's the guy who produced the Four Seasons and over 80 top 10 hit singles. And he liked Glitter House, and he was making the Barbarella movie soundtrack. So they actually are the vocals who sing Barbarella, Psychedella,
Yeah.
And that led to a record contract. They used my pictures for the publicity, and the record company started hiring me. I think my first job was Tommy James and the Shondells warming up a crowd for Hubert Humphrey in 1968. But then a friend of ours said we had to see Ike and Tina Turner. We went to see them, and Tina was absolutely amazing. And as luck would have it, they played a few shows around New York that week. So we came back a couple of days later at a place called the Honka Monka Room in Queens. I can't make that up.
Honka Monka Room in Queens?
Yeah,
is it still there?
No.
Jinx.
No, but I validated on the. It's validated on the internet. It does exist.
Oh, okay.
And I know I was there.
We should make an NFT token of it.
Right. Well, it was very very simple. I remember it was just kind of a bar with a basement that had linoleum on the floor and a small stage, and somehow they crammed the horn players and the drummer and Ike and Tina and Ikettes all on this little stage,
little tiny room.
And that night I brought my camera. I was taking pictures.
Nice.
And I had seen the first night as Tina danced off the stage, a strobe light flashes, and you just get all these different images of Tina in the strobe light. So when we saw him at the Honka Monka Room, I was at the end of the roll. I had 4 or 5 frames left, and the lights were flashing. I wonder what would happen if I took a 1-second exposure and caught a few flashes in one frame.
Yeah.
And there's 3 or 4 other pictures that didn't really come out at all.
Okay, I was going to ask if there was other ones.
There's 3 that don't look quite right. And
yeah,
then there's
that one is insane.
Because I had no idea where to point the camera or what the timing was. It was just a guess.
It's a masterpiece.
And in fact, that picture came out so perfectly.
It's unbelievable.
And,
what
since
camera
then,
was that at the time?
Actually, I was using a Minolta that I borrowed from my dad. I think a SR7, something like that. It's not the camera; it's what you do with it.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
And
I know that.
Spoken like a master.
Yeah, and that picture it kind of captures 5 images of Tina in the one frame. That just captures so much excitement of Tina Turner.
Yeah.
And so they played again at a theater around in New Jersey a few days later. I made some prints, brought the prints basically to show my friends. And as we were coming out, my friends saw Ike Turner going from one dressing room to another and said, "Oh, show Ike the pictures," and literally pushed me into the rest of my life, pushed me in front of Ike. And
that's amazing.
He stopped and said, "What pictures?" And he looked at them. He said, "These are great pictures. I got to show them to Tina." He took me in the dressing room, and all of a sudden I'm standing there like, I could hardly breathe. Tina Turner's looking at my pictures and liking them. And that began a long relationship.
Did you see that one, the exposure one?
Yeah. That
wow.
was one of them.
That
but there was also 3 or 4 or 5 other good ones from that night.
Yeah.
And Tina actually was looking at the contact prints and saying, "Oh, I like this one. I like that one." And so Ike asked me to come to meet him in New York. A couple of days later, he introduced me to a publicist. That publicist brought me to a party where I started meeting other people. Billy Smith was one of those people. He brought me to MCA Records and said that they should hire me for this new piano player that was coming to town. And the lady was like saying, "Oh, he's brand new. Let's see what happens." And Billy said, No, I think he's going to be good. You should get a photographer. And that's how I got to photograph Elton John.
Right.
First time he played in New York, and then he came back a couple months later.
Where did he play?
Fillmore East. He opened for Leon Russell.
Which is like Irving Plaza, right?
Yeah. Tiny.
Well, it's not tiny.
Not tiny. It was a theater. It was more like
700
1,000 people.
East?
Well, maybe more. It was a small theater. It was
It's funny that he opened for Leon Russell, and then later on they
I love Leon Russell
kept playing
too.
together.
Well, because Leon broke his career, and so Elton returned the favor. Elton's really, a very good guy. His career exploded. Like he was an opening act, came back a couple months later as a headliner. A few months later, he played Carnegie Hall. And I think in the same year or within the year, he was in Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
So he just really jumped, a lot.
So wait, back to the start with your getting your start from your mom, who was a photographer,
Right.
and she also told you had to be the best.
Well, yeah,
Or
I do
whatever you
remember-
do, you should be the best.
It's quite a awesome charge. You can do anything you want, just be the best.
I find
And I'm
that
like, wow,
fascinating. That's great. That's wild.
Yeah, because anything you want is quite a lot of opportunity. It's hard. Many artists have that blank canvas.
Yeah.
And then you can do anything. Well, you have to do something.
But you have to be the best.
It's really hard to do anything. And
she
especially
could've
if you
said-
have to do something and be the best, especially if you're starting out with the concept of being the best and you don't even know what you're doing yet.
Right.
But it's odd that, it's funny that the way it worked out, because I always did strive to just do it right, do it better, do it best,
Yeah. That's what I'm thinking. Like,
I don't
actually,
let things go.
that helped, I think.
It does. I don't want it to be mediocre.
Right. And it's
If it's something I made and I'm going to have to answer for it, it shouldn't be mediocre. I want to be proud of it.
Yeah.
And I usually am.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, do you have any siblings?
3
Are they
brothers.
Brothers?
Yeah.
Are they also artists or
No, not at all.
Not at all.
I had an older brother who was a bit of a bully, and I had 2 younger brothers who are none of them are in showbiz or
Right.
in the public eye.
None of them know anything about non-fungible tokens, right? I'm just kidding.
Well,
It's a
actually,
joke.
one of them might.
One of them, yeah.
One of them's a gambler,
Oh.
and he would love that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
right? That's what this is all
$6
about,
million
right?
Yeah. So, what did your mom think about your photography? Did she think you were the best?
Yes, she lived long enough to see that I really succeeded, and that was quite rewarding that my mom could finally see me succeed. Because for many years it wasn't a success. For many years, I was just drinking with buddies and CBGBs, and it didn't look like success.
Right.
There were times when it looked like what's the opposite of success? Failure, total failure.
Or just fucking around, probably, right?
Well, yeah, in a sense, but no, worse than that. It was pretty failure. Sometimes my mom saw me in some dire circumstances, and then when she was 94, she came to Brazil, and I had a massive exhibit, 13,000 square feet, huge exhibit. The mayor of Sao Paulo was there. The senator of the state was there, both good friends of mine, with their son, who's the one who hooked up the whole exhibit. I got to introduce my mom to these people. It was really, she was finally proud of me. She was really proud of me. And that was very rewarding, It
That's
was good.
beautiful. I love hearing that.
Yeah.
That's great, man. Yeah.
And my dad I had an exhibit at Studio 54 in 1982, I think. It was the first kind of big public exhibit I had in New York, and 3,000 people came. It was a great party. And my dad came to that, and so he also saw that I had achieved some success with what I was doing.
That's great.
Because when I started, there was no word rock photographer.
Right.
Like that, rock was a thing on the ground.
Yeah.
It's just recent.
Now they have college courses for that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But back then, the idea of, pursuing a career, even in rock and roll, was kind of like outrageous. Rock and roll was, when I was growing up, was what they called juvenile delinquent music.
Right.
Yeah. It was not acceptable. It was, is it acceptable now? I don't know.
Yeah, I think so. I think so. But and then you wound up on tour with the Sex Pistols. Speaking
Yeah.
of juvenile
Yeah,
delinquents.
speaking of juvenile delinquents. Well, if you read the book, Right Place, Right Time, it's got to be in the right place, right time. But then you have to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And as I explain in the book, one thing leads to another meeting Ike and Tina kind of led to meeting other people and taking more and more pictures. And I ended up in the first book of rock and roll photography, which I think is called The Photography of Rock. It's kind of simple. There's about a dozen people in there. And the writer who did the biographies for that book was doing a story about the Elephant's Memory Band. And the Elephant's Memory Band at that moment was being hired by John and Yoko as their backup band in the studio. So he asked me to come and take pictures of John and Yoko doing an interview about the Elephant's Memory story, not even about a John and Yoko story. And they liked my pictures, and they asked me to come back, and I'm still friends with Yoko today.
That's incredible.
But working with John and Yoko in the Elephant's Memory Band, I ended up making an album cover for the Elephant's Memory, and so I met their managers, and in the manager's office, one of the assistants there said, "Oh, you got to come and see this other band we managed. They're called the New York Dolls." So it's kind of funny that meeting John and Yoko kind of led me to the New York Dolls.
To punk rock.
And the New York Dolls certainly led me into the rest of my life. I spent a lot of time with them. They became like family. I did go across America. We went to Los Angeles and San Francisco, made a lot of videotapes.
They brought you as well.
They didn't bring me. I paid for it.
You paid for it.
I was having too much fun.
You followed them.
But, I mean, in those days, yes, they brought me, but no, they didn't really pay for it.
But you were allowed, backstage.
I had complete access. But we didn't sign papers to get access like you do nowadays. It was like, "Hey, Bob, come on, look at this." We were friends. We hung out together. So I went to California because it was fun. Made a videotape, and actually the videotape's streaming online. It's called New York Dolls. One of them is Looking Fine on Television, and the other one I think is...
Videotape what? You
All
had
dolled
like
up.
one of the old Sony's?
I had the very first Portapack, Sony Portapack videotape machine. It's black and white, mono sound. It was a box about this big that weighed 40 pounds. It was a reel-to-reel. You thread the tape through the reels. 5-inch reel.
Pay attention, kids. It used to be hard.
Yeah, it used to be hard. Yeah, I mean, this was not hard. This was like the modern miracle. Because
right.
before that, it was film.
Right.
And film, first of all, was very sensitive as far as exposure and so on. The Portapack was automatic exposure because it couldn't see anything in the dark, but in the daylight, it automatically exposed. But you didn't have to pay $10 for a 3-minute roll of film. You didn't have to pay $15 to get that roll of film developed, and you didn't need a projector and a screen and a place to show it.
Right, you could show it.
With videotape, $10, you got a half an hour. That was a lot. It was like 10 times what you get for the film, and you could show it back anywhere. Anywhere there was a TV, you could plug it in a hotel room, in a dressing room, in your apartment.
RCA.
And immediately after the show. So especially when I started with Ike and Tina, they loved having me come along and make tapes. And then right after the show in the hotel room, Tina and the Ikettes would look at the show while it was still fresh in their mind and say, "Oh, maybe we should be turning left," or, "let's do this other step," and they'd improve the act. The Dolls, they just like seeing themselves on TV, having a party.
When you're with the Dolls in that time, were you aware of like a cultural importance happening, or were you just hanging with a rock band that you were friends with?
Well, people say that. Did you know the historical moment that we were in? No, I don't think you know.
Did you have a glimmer of that, or not at all?
Well, I looking back, I mean, writing the book, I've done a lot of thinking about it.
Yeah.
And while we certainly didn't know we were making history, there were times when I felt it was important, and that's why I documented it.
Yeah.
I just felt, this is too weird. People are going to want to know about this,
Right.
And I was in the middle of it, watching it happening. So I did feel some urgency to document the people and, what they were doing.
And does that come from like a love of life, or like a spirit realm in a way, like kind of giving value back to the world that you value, or am I reading too much into it?
Well, that's a really nice way to describe it. I'd like to think of it like that.
But what else?
I am a somewhat spiritual person, and I do like to give back.
Right.
I've found that that's one of the secrets of success, is not only to take, but to give.
Adding value.
If you get into a situation and you add something to that situation, people are going to want you to come back again.
That's why I'm trying to tell you about NFTs, Bob.
That's just money.
Anyway, yeah. So, well, And then did that lead to getting in with the Sex Pistols, being with the New York Dolls?
Well, yeah, because when the Dolls were breaking up, Malcolm McLaren showed up with all these outfits, these clothes that he wanted them to wear, and he found out that the band was falling apart. So he actually saved Johnny and Jerry's life by getting them into rehab, and Arthur too, and cleaned them up long enough to wear the red clothes that he had made for them. Malcolm's interest was selling clothes. And he just wanted the band to be an advertisement. So anyway, but the Dolls were too far gone with their addictions and their excesses. And so they broke up. They just fell apart, and so Malcolm and Syl actually had a plan to start a new band in England. And Malcolm actually went back to England a month later. He brought Syl's white guitar and his piano and amplifier to England, and Syl was going to come over. He was going to send Syl a ticket, and Syl was going to come and start this band. So as I understand it, Malcolm started looking for musicians, and I had a little role to play in that I introduced David and Syl to a promoter I know from Japan, and he ended up setting up a Japanese tour for them, and they were totally flat broke because the manager had dropped them, and all of a sudden a guy from Japan offered him some money to go to Japan, so they did that. And Malcolm says he got kind of pissed that they went to Japan, or he got tired of waiting for Syl to come to England to start the band, so he got this other guy, Johnny Rotten, and he started a different band without Syl. Syl says that he was ready to go, but Malcolm never sent him a ticket. So he was still waiting, and it's like, okay, give me the money, So anyway, that's what happened, that Malcolm started the Sex Pistols. About a year later, I went to Europe for the first time, actually not for punk rock. I didn't know there was a punk rock scene happening. I went because my son, I think, was about 2 years old at that point, and had spent the summer in Paris with my in-laws, and I wanted to go and see him. And I just made some money with the Bay City Rollers and Kiss, I think. And I bought myself a plane ticket, and I remember being really scared. People say, how do you just go out there and do it? And I knew a couple of editors in Europe, and I thought I'll go meet them and see if I can sell pictures. But the idea of actually getting on a plane and going to a foreign country where I didn't know any languages, I'd never been there. I only had whatever American Express checks. In those days, they didn't have international credit cards. You had a couple of dollars in your pocket. And you hope everything works out.
Right.
But I do remember the feeling of driving to the airport going, is this really okay?
Right. It used to be an adventure.
Major, especially the first time.
Yeah.
It's like, what am I doing? Am I going to ever get back home?
Yeah,
and now I feel
yeah.
so comfortable. I travel around the world. I made a lot of friends in Europe.
Yeah.
It really did work out. And because when I got to England, I went to Paris where my son was. I went to Germany where the big magazines were. I met a couple of those editors. And I flew to England, and Malcolm found me a place to stay in a bed and breakfast, very cheap little place. And he took me to a place called Club Louise in a basement, which had been sort of gay club, and so they were open to different kinds of people. And in that basement, I met Sex Pistols, The Clash, Susie and the Banshees, Sue Catwoman, John Savage, and Caroline Coon, the journalist who wrote about punk. It was like the whole punk scene. It was like the back room at Max's in an English version, or CBGB's in an English version. It's all the Billy Idol was there. I think Elvis Costello came around. Marco Peroni, I remember talking to him. And that was just the kernel of the scene. And I happened to be there in 1976 and meet these people. And then it all just kind of blew up. And Malcolm was encouraging me to take pictures of the Sex Pistols because they were wearing his clothes, and so I got to know them. And Johnny was rotten. I remember the first night I sat down and met him, and he's sitting at the table talking, and he's saying all these dumbass, insulting things to people. And I just remember thinking, this guy's really, to get his name right, he's pretty nasty, But it was him and not me, and so I didn't really get offended. I mean, just because he's a jerk and he says jerky things has nothing on me. So I just kind of watched him. And we sort of made friends when he realized that I'm not going to react to his act.
Yeah.
And then Malcolm was telling him I'd take good pictures of him. I put him in American magazine. So that helped too,
And
but then getting to know the Clash, I think it was that first trip, Caroline Coon and Vivian Westwood drove me to the ICA to see the Clash.
That's wild.
And I had no idea what I was in for. I remember I couldn't understand a word he was saying, but I understood the power and the fury and the intensity, and I was blown away. Kind of like what Legs McNeil said about the Ramones, that I don't know what I saw, but I knew I wanted to see it again.
Right.
And so I came a year later. I went back to England. I started because I've been working with more magazines and had a chance to go over and see, take pictures again, meet some more of the bands. And by then there was a scene developing that I had heard about, and so I came back and Sid was in the band. That was a change. And just one thing leads to another. I mean, it's all in the book. Right place, right time.
Yeah, that's funny, that story about the hot dog picture with Sid and the mustard and everything like that.
Well, that was on the American tour, because when I came back in 77, Malcolm arranged it, so I went to Luxembourg. They did an interview, the Sex Pistols did an interview with Radio Luxembourg. And we went over there and took... And it seems most bands, you get on a plane, you go there, you meet a DJ, you do an interview. With the Sex Pistols, every stop along the way was kind of chaotic. There was a lot of alcohol involved. There was the place where the Radio Luxembourg was actually this big old building that used to be a prison or something. And we're in the lobby waiting for the elevator just to go upstairs to the interview. And whenever the band would be in the same place, because they were not a band that you really pose and you saw, okay, everybody show up at 2:00 and expect them to be there in the studio or something. That doesn't happen. But if they were standing next to each other, that's a group shot. So I would take some pictures. So Steve drops his pants, and this guy kind of stains on his underwear or something. And the receptionist freaks out, and we almost got thrown out of the building before we ever got it, as we walked in. So things like that would happen. And that was, I think, in November 77, and they came to America in January. At that point, I was thinking they were coming to New York. They were going to play Saturday Night Live. And I was going to get some pictures of them in New York, and that would be a continuation of my story. I had seen them twice in England, and now I'd have a couple of pictures of them in America. Fine. They weren't a big band.
Right.
I mean, I thought Sex Pistols were just some fantasy of Malcolm's. Like, the bands that played at CBGB's were basically unknown outside of a small circle of, rock scene readers.
Right.
I didn't understand how the press was reacting so wildly to the Sex Pistols. It didn't make sense. They weren't that good,
Right.
And they were nasty. Joe Strummer said he saw them play, and he didn't understand. He said Joe came from the theater of the school of theater where you entertain and people enjoy what you do.
Right.
And he said the Sex Pistols seemed to be doing the opposite, trying to make them not have a good time, trying to make them not enjoy what they were doing, trying to actually make them not like them. Joe says, I thought the audience is supposed to like you.
Right.
So it was kind of opposite. And anyway, it seemed that Sid had some kind of visa problem, and so they didn't get to New York. And if you actually see Elvis Costello, his first show on Saturday Night Live, Malcolm McLaren recommended Elvis, and that's how he broke his career.
Right.
If you ever see the YouTube version of that, the drummer's wearing a T-shirt that says "Thanks, Malk."
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is that the one where he did the false start? Like,
yeah. So he got on Saturday Night Live and then got kicked off.
Right.
That's funny.
And the Clash tried that, where in the middle of the song you change to the other song, because Saturday Night Live is live and they got a lot of rules.
Other bands have done that.
And you have to do just
Elvis
what they
was the
say,
first.
and you can't, if they tell you you have to do this song or you
Billy
agree.
Joe did that somewhere in some festival a couple of years ago, where they told him not to do something.
Oh, well, that was they were cutting him off, and he flipped out.
And then
He
said,
got
"Fuck
over
it,"
that.
and then
He went to rehab after that. But the Clash was going to change the song, and they had a beatbox, the cassette player, and they had it set up to play the other song. And in the middle of the song, Joe was going to hit play and right up next to the microphone and play this other song. And they had it all set in the dressing room. It was ready to go. And then they're on set live, and they're doing the whole thing, and he goes, picks it up, he pushes play, and nothing happened because he forgot to take it off pause.
Oh, shit.
and he ends up throwing the thing away and running around.
Oh.
Saturday Night Live was a funny show, but so the Sex Pistols ended up not playing in New York. They played in Atlanta, so I had to, in order to get keep my file consistent. I wanted some pictures of them in America. So I flew to Atlanta to get some pictures for the first show. And I thought, that's it. I'll just go down there. I'll get some pictures of them in America. I'm done. I come home the next morning. I didn't even have extra clothes.
Do you know where they played in Atlanta?
Where did they play?
Yeah, do you remember?
Malcolm had this idea that he was started with the Dolls of playing little out-of-the-way unknown places. Instead of coming to CBGB's, where Lester Bangs and Robert Christgau were ready with their pen to describe and compare, he wanted them to play in front of people. So it was like the Chinese restaurant that turns into a disco at night in a strip mall. It was a place like that.
That's funny.
It was very funny. And it was definitely rednecks. And they had definitely never seen anything like these Sex Pistols or any punk or, local kind of band like that. There was country singers and stuff. They didn't have rock and roll, garage bands down there.
Right.
So it worked kind of well because it really riled up the audience. And but some of these places were that kind of place to begin with. I think Randy's Rodeo, maybe one of them in Texas. The stage actually it was like a giant rope fishnet in front of the stage because it was kind of traditional that if they didn't like what they heard, they would throw a bottle at the band.
Like the
movie
Roadhouse or the Blues Brothers.
Totally. They threw bottles. They threw whatever they had, They'd throw a hammer or a knife. But so I remember the Sex Pistols playing behind this giant netting to keep the...
That's funny.
Because Johnny was, like, egging them on, like, hey, you faggot cowboys. And, well, that didn't go over very well in Texas.
Yeah.
But, anyway, because the point was that I ended up on the tour because I went the first night. I was, like I say, expecting to come home the next morning. And after the show, a couple of drinks, whatever, and we go out in the parking lot to getting on the bus, and I'm saying goodbye. And I remember saying, well, so long, Malcolm. Too bad I can't come, but I'm sure you're going to have a wonderful time. And he goes, yeah, you can't come, Bob, because we only allow 12 on the bus, and there's the band and me. And, well, that's only 11, Bob. Why don't you get on the bus? And I'm like, what? And then a friend of mine, another photographer, said, oh, I'll come, Malcolm. He said, sorry, Bob asked first. And I don't remember actually asking, but I got on the bus.
You got picked.
And 10 days later, I was in San Francisco. I made one of my favorite phone calls. I woke up when it was over, and I called the concierge, and I said, what time's the next plane to New York? And I came home. I remember, because I had shot like 70 rolls of film. I came home. I just developed film, made prints for 3 days. There was a blizzard in New York in January when I came back. And when I came out for air, I remember there was no traffic. The street was 3 feet of snow or something. I walked all the way across Bleecker Street to CBGB's just to see what I missed, if anybody was around. And because, it was a local bar. It was the kind of place that even in a blizzard, everybody would walk a few blocks and go have a drink and get together.
Yeah.
So I go in, and Johnny Rotten was there. And we all got these T-shirts that said, I survived the Sex Pistols tour. Like Warner Brothers gave us shirts at the end. And he said, you hear the news, mate? And I'm like, what? And he opens his shirt and he says, I survived the Sex Pistols tour. And he had written, but the band didn't. And I looked at that. I said, well, what does that mean? He goes, oh, we broke up, mate. I go, what do you mean you broke up? The whole world is watching you. Like right this week, everybody in the world is talking about Sex Pistols. He goes, oh, we broke up.
Where have you been, Bob?
And all the pictures I had taken, the whole tour, every day taking pictures of all of them. It just, I was expecting 4, 5, 6 page photo stories. It all collapsed into a postage stamp size obituary. Like there used to be a band called the Sex Pistols. And I literally, they're still on the bottom drawer of a cabinet because we didn't need to go to that drawer for 6 years. It sat in the bottom.
Crazy.
I mean, it's still in the bottom. But then Alice Cox made Sid and Nancy, and one of my favorite actors, Gary Oldman, gave Sid he's the most charismatic, crazy actor in Hollywood.
I agree.
And he made Sid this charismatic, wonderfully sympathetic character.
Lovable.
And all of a sudden, the Sex Pistols are the punk band of the world, and Sid is the guy.
Yeah.
That movie shifted
If
things?
you want a little doll of a punk,
Really?
it looks
I
like
guess.
Sid.
You feel that that
absolutely,
movie created
absolutely,
the change?
absolutely.
Created the myth.
I had no request for Sex Pistols until Sid and Nancy came out.
That's funny.
Yeah. I mean, there was a couple of stories that, the week they died, but for 6 years, till 1984 when the movie came out.
Yeah.
And I actually met Gary Oldman at the Sunset Marquee in Hollywood and thanked him for reviving all my Sid Vicious pictures.
When that happened, did you go like, "Oh my God, I hope I still have those pictures"? I
have everything.
You're a collector.
Yeah.
You know.
No, there's like 3 things that got lost, and I know what they are, and I hate people for them.
What's your birth sign?
Scorpio. It's right on the but a Libra. It's like right on.
I'm
the
a
edge,
Libra.
So I'm kind of like a nice guy for a Scorpio, but I don't forget. You know.
You have all the videotapes.
I'm just a softie
I have
because I'm
everything.
straight Libra.
I have everything. All the videotapes, every format of videotape. My wife's been archiving everything.
Right. Can you still
organizing it
play
all.
back some of that stuff, or some of it? Is lost?
Most of it, I mean, if you get the right machine, we have copies of, because we have the half-inch video. It's getting a little harder to find somebody who's got a machine that works, but we have a lot of it copied. But I have 3/4-inch video, VHS, Betamax.
Crazy.
We got Super 8. We got 16 millimeter. I mean, every format. There were different times for different jobs. I've shot in just about everything.
Do you want to make a documentary, maybe, like along with the book?
Well, Don Letts made a pretty good documentary about me 10 years ago.
Oh, okay.
Called Rock and Roll Exposed, and he it wasn't just about me. It was what the image means to rock and roll, like how you hear a song, you want to know what they look like.
Yeah.
You know, like is this a guy in purple hot pants, or do they wear tuxedos? I mean, what do they look like? It's really a big part of the rock and roll image, and then you copy what they look like if you like the music. So image is very important, and Don made a great film about that. Iggy Pop, Alice Cooper, Yoko Ono, Debbie Harry, they all comment in that film. I'd like to make another one. It is a while later. That one is so good, and it was made for cable TV, which has a blanket music license. So they can license all the music to use on cable TV. But in order to stream it or charge for it is another license that's like so expensive, because he's got Led Zeppelin and the Beatles and Frank Sinatra. I mean, we got a really good soundtrack. So I don't know if that film can really come out. But yeah, I'd like to make another one.
And then, so that brings us to Zeppelin, I guess. Right? Or where do we go from the Sex Pistols?
Well, I mean, Zeppelin was actually earlier. I met them in 1973. They were already huge. I hadn't really heard of them. I had been with Kiss and Alice Cooper and other bands. I just wasn't. They were kind of peripheral. I remember seeing a little later Balloon of a Zeppelin in the record companies, and I'm like, what the hell is that? Some band. But whenever I heard it, it was kind of this, blues, but not blue. I don't know. I wasn't an early fan, and so I wasn't really aware of them until Lisa Robinson called and said, I did a lot of work with Lisa Robinson.
Shout out Lisa Robinson. She's great.
Well, I did a lot of work with Lisa. She was the editor, not only of she was the writer for the New York Post, which went to like 175 magazines and newspapers, but also Rock Scene magazine, which was sort of a fun project of ours, which was a deluxe kind of fanzine, like almost a real magazine, except we didn't really get advertising, because we published a lot of stories about bands that didn't have record companies, that didn't have backing, that we liked, just bands that we heard about that we liked. And so it was really about the rock scene. So Lisa, but also big bands, Kiss and Led Zeppelin. So Lisa called and said, we're going to go see Led Zeppelin in Pittsburgh, I think. And I said, how are we getting to Pittsburgh? And she said, they have their own plane. I was like, that's nice. So we go out there, and there's this gigantic 727 plane. Had 2 bedrooms in it, a big brass bar with a piano built in the middle. So a nice plane, very nice plane. And but I met the band right then at the hotel when I just went up there and we went out to the airport. And getting on the plane, I think it was Lisa and Robert said, let's get a picture with the plane. And they walked over by the wing, and I took a picture. And that's become the most famous picture of Led Zeppelin around, in front of their airplane.
Happened?
That's how that photo happened. And what I really like about it is the plane is so big it doesn't fit in the picture.
Yeah.
You could
And
just see
these guys
engine.
have their shirts wide open, and their own airplane. And lots of people have told me that picture inspired them, that they wanted to do that.
Oh yeah,
they wanted
that's
to have
the rock and roll dream.
The free, that freedom to just be in my own airplane.
Was that a single snap one?
And
or
actually, I think there was about 6 frames at the end of the roll. I think that was the last frame.
That encapsulates the rock and roll dream.
Was it Dave Bryan from Bon Jovi is one of the few who actually lived the dream. Like a lot of kids see that and go, I want my own plane.
Yeah.
And he actually grew up and got on one of those kind of planes.
I'm still working for my plane.
Because he told me that inspired him to do that.
Yeah. Have you ever considered like where your gift for photography comes from, or have you ever thought why, like, not to like make you become immodest or whatever, but have you ever like analyzed why you're so good and you captured so many iconic images?
No.
Or do you?
No, I never analyzed it.
You haven't analyzed.
It's just something I do. It's I've had it this viewpoint. Sometimes you can look at somebody's pictures and they have a viewpoint, and I kind of surprised myself. A couple months ago, we were going through some things, and I found an old high school wallet, and there were 3 pictures I had taken in there when I was probably 15 and 16, and they looked like my kind of pictures.
Right.
They had the same, and I didn't have any technique or know what I was doing back then.
Right.
And yet it's that same moment, it's that same depth of view, it's the same softness, and I was stunned, actually, how similar it was to my later work.
Yeah, your voice was there early on.
And it's just what I do, and I don't know what that exactly is. And in a sense, when I met John and Yoko the first time, for this, it was an interview. Like I said, the writer for the book, the Photography of Rock, did an interview, and he told me to come. And I remember when I was actually walking down the hall, and John and Yoko were going to be on the other side of the door, and I was going to meet John Lennon and Yoko Ono, and this was like unbelievable. For a kid from Long Island who heard the Beatles on the radio, loved the movies, really liked John and Yoko, the crazy things that they did for peace. I admired it a lot. And now, they were just amazing. And all of a sudden, I was going to meet them. And I was walking down the hall, and I was trembling. I was like, and I don't usually do that, but...
you got starstruck.
And I realized, it was John and Yoko.
Right.
It wasn't even just, a band. It was...
Right.
They were artists. They were more important than a band, And I remember stopping and realizing I can't take pictures shaking like this. I have to calm down, take a breath, get hold of myself. And I realized the only way this would actually work, then I would end up with doing anything else with John and Yoko, is if I did what I did and it came out well and they happened to like it. And I couldn't fake it. I couldn't try to do something else. I couldn't do something special that day just for them. I could only do what I do and hope that that's what they wanted. And thank God I did what I did, and it was what they wanted.
What did you do?
I took pictures of them. I took nice pictures of them.
Isn't it wild how they...
I took nice pictures at the right time. I caught a really nice expression actually that night of both of them really smiling and being together, and I did it in a way that didn't intrude on their conversation and didn't make them feel uncomfortable. Years later, Yoko actually mentioned that many photographers come in and they're so nervous that they're, shaking and they're yelling at their assistant or even throwing things, and that makes John and Yoko nervous.
Right.
And I came in, Yoko described in the film, in Don's film, she says something like, he doesn't dance, he doesn't run, he just kind of floats.
Oh, about you.
So about me, that I just kind of float. And that's the way I take life. I take it as it comes. I try not to interfere. I try to go with, just make things work.
It's very zen.
Yeah, in a sense, in a Long Island Jewish sense.
Yeah, there's like a
But yeah, zen has been a big part of my life. And actually in Japan, one of my very early trips, I met a guy who became later a very good friend of mine. And I was in the back of a taxi cab with him, and we were going to dinner, and I was telling him I really liked Japan. I really wanted to come back. I wanted to come back and go to a monastery and just, learn. I wanted to stay in a monastery and learn about Zen. And he looked at me and he said, "You can learn about Zen in the back of a taxi cab." And I was done. I was done right there.
Yeah.
Boom. Thank you. Saved the whole trip of sitting on the, eating rice for a year somewhere.
You got enlightened in the back
and
of a
I've been
cab.
that, in the present. And that's what Zen is. It's about just being in the present, not interfering, and making the best of it.
Yeah.
So that's what I've been trying to do.
It's funny how John and Yoko took so much heat during that time of their sort of bids for peace and everything like that. They got so much criticism at that time, and he got so much criticism, and yet historically that's like some of the things he's most admired for now.
Yeah. Well, there was a lot of Well, first of all, it's historic that if you talk about peace, people get angry.
Isn't that funny?
And it really is. You know, Gandhi, Jesus,
why
everybody
is
who talks
that?
about peace, everybody gets angry.
I know.
That's just one thing to begin with. Well, because you're opposing the powers that are making money off of war. You know?
And you're opposing something in
that's a
human
lot.
nature too, I think.
Well, that too. And yeah, John actually explained that. It's very difficult to be peaceful.
Yeah.
And you have to work at being peaceful. And one thing that I learned actually was the Maharishi that they went to, who said that in order for there to be peace in the world, the whole world has to be peaceful. In order for the whole world to be peaceful, each country must be peaceful. And for each country to be peaceful, each state, each county, each town, and each village in that town must be peaceful. And for every village to be peaceful, every household in that town has to be peaceful. So if you want peace in the world, you got to stop fighting with your family to begin with. Mm-hmm. And that's not easy.
You got to stop fighting with yourself.
Yes.
Ultimately,
you have to be peaceful.
Yeah.
And that's not easy.
No, it's not.
And that's where it begins. And John was somebody that people admired because he admitted over and over that he was not peaceful.
Yeah.
That he was an angry guy, like so many others.
Right.
And but to be aware of it and to try to control it, that's the job of mankind,
Yeah. That's
so
deep.
I've always admired John and Yoko, for that. It's funny that in this work for peace, people they did get a lot of heat because they did things like they mailed an acorn to every leader of the world, asking them to plant it so that the world could grow together in peace. Mm. Now, these are kind of conceptual ideas that Yoko, coming from that conceptual art world, where the art is the thought,
right?
It made a lot of sense to a lot of people out in the world. They're, well, you plant an acorn and there's going to be peace in the world. You're crazy, But they got a lot of news that way,
right?
I think it was Abby Hoffman who said that, when the news comes on at night, the first story is about whatever the president did today. And the second story is like whoever died or, killed somebody. And that's, the news. You can't get into those stories. You can't make those stories. You can't get that time. But the last story is the human interest story that has a little fun to it. So like when Abby Hoffman and Jerry Rubin went to Wall Street and they threw dollar bills on the stock exchange and everybody went crazy. That's the kind of story you can get at the last minute of the news,
Yeah.
And John and Yoko sending acorns to all the leaders of the world will be on the news because it's a cockamamie story, but it'll talk about peace. So when John and Yoko got married, they, like most couples, wanted to have a honeymoon, a private place to go and just be alone together and celebrate the commitment. And the more they thought about where they could be private, the more they realized the English press would try to find them and hound them. And the more secret it was, the more valuable the picture of them would be. And that all the press would try to find them. And there was really no place that they could comfortably think that they could be private. And so Yoko had the idea, well, in that case, let's make it public. Mm. And what's the most valuable picture? A picture of us in bed on our honeymoon.
Right.
And we'll let them come into our bedroom and take that picture, but we're going to put the word peace right behind our head. And every newspaper in the world that day carried the word peace.
Yeah.
And every interview had the word peace.
Yeah.
And it still does.
Yeah. It's amazing.
50 years later. Every single one of those pictures says peace.
And hair. It says hair, too.
Well, because it's fun. They try to make it fun. John and Yoko said, we'll be the Marx Brothers. We'll be the comedians for peace.
Right.
If that's what it takes to get in the news. Mm. And they did it over and over again. And did it really well.
And they got some aggressive interviews during that time, too. Like real.
Oh, yeah. People saying, whatever race you're in, you're not in my human race.
Right. Like just real hyper-aggressive. Like not just like, oh, you're goofy or
and there was a lot
mild
of
criticism.
There was racism
fine,
involved,
like
too.
hardcore.
Yoko was not. I mean, the other Beatles and Stones, they ended up with the pretty blonde models, like they're supposed to. And, rock star world. And John came in with this, like, Japanese odd artist. I mean, Yoko was actually quite well known and admired in the avant-garde conceptual art kind of world that she was in. Mm-hmm. John met her at her own one-woman show, which in the 60s, for a woman artist to have her own solo exhibit was highly unusual. So Yoko was really well established in that world. And John blew it. He brought the whole glare of pop music world into this intellectual art scene. And people went, what is she doing? She's crazy. And she's Japanese. And she's not even pretty. And actually, John and a lot of people do feel she's pretty. But
definitely.
I think that was
Beautiful.
one of the things that really, really hurt because they called her ugly.
Yeah.
And he said, they don't even call like the prime minister or some old battle axe ugly, like.
Yeah, people are wild.
And so it's interesting. Just now in the news is Harry and Meghan leaving England because the press was so brutal. That's why John and Yoko left. There's a new movie about Britney. It's not about Britney. It's about what the press does to celebrity.
Yeah.
And there are people who look like those celebrities. Like when you're talking about these celebrities, there's an actual person in an actual bedroom somewhere who feels that. And John and Yoko were those people who did not want to be insulted by the English press.
Yeah.
And
he embraced New York City. And you gave him the New York City shirt too, right?
Yeah,
That's
but
good.
I saw the shirt. I wish I could give credit to the guys who made it because it was just something they sold it on a blanket in Times Square on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
It was just a homemade thing that some guys made. And as soon as I saw it, it was just so simple and powerful.
Yeah.
And just that phrase, New York City, actually carries weight around the
tough.
world.
Tough.
When I was in Japan, I used to say I can eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner just by saying New York all day. Like people will take you out and want to meet you.
Yeah.
And so I just saw the letters, and like I say, the graphic was so bold. I bought a couple of them. They were $5, and I bought myself one, and I liked it. And the next time I saw the guys, I bought a couple more, and eventually I bought like half a dozen, and I got a couple for my friends. Whenever I'd see these guys, it was just. Like I say, it's no store hours, I would be riding a bike around New York, and all of a sudden there they were on the sidewalk. They happened to be out on Tuesday, so I'd get some, And one day I was going to the record plant to see John recording, and the guys were there, so I bought one. And I kind of like it better. We cut the sleeves off. It gives you more of a New York feel to it. I think it's a little corny, the guys who leave this, because now you can buy them all over. There's knockoffs everywhere.
Yeah.
I think it's a little corny if you leave the sleeves on. And in those days, I used to carry a buck knife. It was a style, a thing to do. You cut the lemons for the tequilas with that. And so I cut the sleeves off and I gave it to John. And it was actually a year later, after his lost weekend in Los Angeles, when he was back in New York, we were on the rooftop and I was taking pictures for an album cover. And then we took a few more pictures around the room. And John, I asked John if he still had the shirt that I gave him a year earlier. And the fact that he had, you probably heard about his wild weekend. He kind of got drunk with a
LA.
crew out in L.A.
Harry
and,
Nielsen.
I haven't heard
Harry Nielsen. And
Lost
Alice
Week,
Cooper
it's
and
famous.
Elton John. And
He went nuts in LA for a year.
For a year?
Yeah, they split up and
Oh.
yeah. That's
well, they didn't
heard
quite
that
split up.
story.
After, at the time, John was suing Alan Klein. They were trying to break up the contract with the Beatles, and all of their money was in escrow, and so he didn't really have access to their money. He got bad reviews for the album sometime in New York because it was very political. He got bad reviews for the concert at Madison Square Garden because he just played with the Elephant's Memory, a rollicking rock and roll, and a lot of the political songs from the new album to an audience that wanted to hear the Beatles.
right.
And so he got kind of bad reviews. So he was getting bad reviews. Yoko, in her art, was kind of used to getting bad reviews where people were upset about what she did. Or Yoko's art makes people feel very strongly. And a lot of people don't like to feel very strongly. So they kind of say, Yoko's terrible. She made me feel bad. Whereas, in fact, that's how good she is. But anyway, so she was used to bad reviews. And John was not. And so he was really getting depressed. And Yoko wanted to keep working and said, get out of the house. If all you want to do is drink, go do it somewhere else.
Oh, okay.
He was not in a love affair with May. May was his secretary.
Yeah.
He was not the first executive to sleep with his secretary.
Right.
He was actually in touch with Yoko almost every day, as I understand, until he finally sobered up and she let him come back. But he had to grow up. He had to sober up. And he did grow up. when he came back. He spent some time with the boys just drinking, and that didn't really go anywhere. It ended up with him being splashed across the world as a jerk with a Kotex on his head.
Mm-hmm.
And he came back and he sobered up. He stopped drinking and started making better records. And then Yoko, let him come back home, and they had Sean, and the rest is just a beautiful happily ever after until
Tragedy.
it wasn't, until some guy just walked out of the shadows and ended it all.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I interrupted the story. You said you asked him if he had the T-shirt. I'm sorry.
The what?
You asked him if he had the T-shirt. We cut that story before you finished it. Where you asked him,
New York
does
City.
he have the shirt from a year ago?
That he had the shirt. Oh, I'm sorry. So we were on the roof taking the pictures, and I asked him if he still had the shirt. And the fact that he knew right where it was, that he had gone to California and back, and he knew, he had a lot of things. People always gave him things, but he kept that one. So I knew he liked it. And he put it on right away, and we took the pictures because, Skyline was up there. I had no idea that it was going to be as important, but he was very comfortable that day. He was very sober. He was feeling good. His hair looked good. The sun was kind of going in and out of the clouds a little. And it was just a really good day, so we got good pictures that day. But like I said, we had no idea that one, especially since he's English, we weren't thinking like New York City is going to be representing this John Lennon. But in a sense it does, because New York is the place where people come from wherever to establish their new identity, to establish who they are and, succeed in New York. There's a power to New York and a freedom in New York that lets you establish who you are. It doesn't hold you down to traditions. Nobody's ever done that here. In New York, you can do whatever you want and get away with it. 24 hours a day, that's why people like New York. It's wide open, to opportunity.
Yeah.
Although you do have to work hard. That's one of the funny things about my life is I was into the turn on, tune in, drop out, like I don't want to work kind of idea. I ended up working 24/7. But in a sense, because I like what I do, but it is work, But I get to go to good parties and traveled all over the world. And I get to meet all kinds of interesting people, that's for sure,
Yeah, you certainly have. What about, and you photographed Frank Sinatra as well?
Oh, well, I did take some pictures. No, I never met Frank Sinatra.
Oh, you never did?
Not met Frank Sinatra, no. I took some pictures from a distance at a concert. It's kind of interesting. Growing up, he was the corniest thing, and our parents liked him, so we didn't.
Right.
Until my Italian barber used to play him. He used to come over, and a couple of us would get a haircut at the same time, and Joey used to always play Frank Sinatra. And little by little, I got into it. And then there's a record, Frank Sinatra Live at the Sands with Count Basie Orchestra with Quincy Jones, and it's just a genius record.
Yeah.
Every note, every moment, the way he talks to the audience. If you have a dinner party, you put that record on, you have a wonderful time.
Mm-hmm.
I got to be a real fan. One night, David Johansen and we went to Cy Sims and got the $39.99 leisure suit so we'd fit in with the crowd. And we went to see Frank Sinatra at the Forest Hills on a summer night. It's beautiful.
Nice.
And then I went to CBGB's, still wearing a leisure suit. And it was kind of funny because these girls were making fun of me. They had hitchhiked in from out west somewhere. And they were making fun of me. They were like real punk. And
they thought you were
and
a
actually,
square.
the girl had a T-shirt on that said "Please kill me" with a homemade target. And they were so obnoxious. At the end of the night, they had nowhere to go. I let them come back to my house and sleep on the living room on the floor. And about 6 months later, they showed up in the middle of the Sex Pistols tour in Texas, and we were old friends already.
Is that where Legs got the title to his book, Please Kill Me?
Well, it was a common theme.
Oh, it was?
It's actually more, Richard Hell made a T-shirt that he wore on the Lower East Side at a time when everyone felt like a target because there was so much crime, there was so much mugging, people were being knifed and shot. And Richard walks around with this T-shirt that says, "Please kill me." And everybody goes like, "What are you nuts? You're fighting that?"
Yeah, I think that is nuts because I believe in manifestation.
Yeah, that's why I would not do that.
I would not do that. That takes guts.
He survived.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's still surviving.
Actually, if you ask Richard now, please, Richard, don't come after me, because he says I don't get history right. But I think that he said he didn't actually wear the shirt. He made Richard Lloyd wear the shirt. He made the shirt, but he didn't wear it.
Oh, really?
Something like that.
That's funny.
And if I'm not right,
Well, we're trying to get him on the podcast. We'll definitely ask him that.
We should get Lisa Robinson on the podcast too. That'd be a good one.
Lisa's got a new radio show on Sirius on Wednesday nights.
Oh, cool. Yeah, I met her a long time ago in Atlanta, actually, in the early '90s, before I got a record deal. I crossed paths with her and we hit it off. She's a great lady.
Well, she's one of the most influential people in my life.
I heard you say that.
She got me about half the photo passes or more that I ever got. Certainly the big ones, the Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and groups like that. She told me to go see Debbie Harry. She said, "This really pretty girl. She's going to be big." Lisa knew what was going on.
Yeah. So did you get into the Rolling Stones inner circle the way you did?
No.
No,
I wouldn't say inner circle. I know a number of the people around the Stones. Mick and Keith and Ronnie actually know me enough to say hello if they see me,
right.
Hey Bob kind of thing.
Yeah.
But that only took 30, 40 years, I don't hang out with them, Keith was in my car once. I gave him a ride with Lisa Robinson, actually. But no, it's not a band that I got to really hang out with.
Yeah.
Peripherally, now and then.
But Joe Strummer you did, right?
Joe Strummer slept on my couch, yeah.
Yeah.
Joe Strummer I got to know like a good buddy.
I got to know him a little bit, too. He was a great guy.
He was great. He was... Joe listened to people. He didn't just talk to people. He listened to people. He wanted to know things. He wanted to find out things.
Yeah.
And he never wanted to sleep. Like we were up all night for days. But we had a lot of fun doing that.
Yeah, I heard you say, like, if you go out with Joe, you have to bring your sunglasses.
Yeah, Elizabeth and I would remind ourselves. Actually, after one horrible, we were out all night in Chicago and came home at 8 a.m. And the kind of night when it snows and then it stops and the sun comes out and you're still awake.
It's terrible.
And it's not only are you going home, but that you're going home in sunlight on snow. After that night, whenever we go out, we say, "You got your sunglasses?" Because if you go out to dinner with Joe, you're going to be walking out of a bar at 9, 10 in the morning, and you need sunglasses.
In sunlight on snow after doing a bunch of snow. No.
Well, we didn't, but there was some around that night, I think. Now, oddly enough, I learned how to stay up without that after the 70s. I gave up what they call the dry goods.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you sober or you drink?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Pretty
no
much.
weed or anything like that? A little bit of weed?
I like to be, in the world nowadays.
Yeah.
It's just easier.
Yeah.
I've had enough over the years.
Are you an early riser?
Nowadays, oddly enough, I find myself, if you don't get drunk, you don't sleep till noon,
Right.
And I'm just always surprised when I roll over and I look at the clock and it's like 6:30 or 7 o'clock in the morning and I feel fine.
Yeah.
I feel totally healthy and fine. I just have nothing to do.
Right.
Like who else is awake at 7 in the morning, But I feel very comfortable with that,
So when compiling this book, how did you find the guy that helped you piece it together? Because I heard you say you had to find somebody who wouldn't put
it was a
too
long
much of
odyssey.
their
Because
own.
over the years, I've been wanting to write a book for many years. Actually, my wife and I have been doing what we started out calling research. We drive up to the country on the weekends. She'd read to me in the car. We read a lot of biographies, learning about how they're made and what, how people put them together. Eventually, after 20 years, research turned into what they call procrastination.
Right.
But I worked with a few different writers where I would do an interview and then the guy would kind of write it up. But so often they would put a lot of their personality into it and not enough, not keep enough of mine. And because writing and reading is different from talking. Mm-hmm. That when you're talking, you use what I call verbal punctuation. You go, and you pause, you repeat yourself. When you're writing, you have to use actual punctuation. and it's quite different. And so, like I said, I worked with a bunch of different people over the years, and every time I would get to a point where I think I can do some interviews, and we get it back, and it was so bad that I would like just get off of it for a year or two. I wouldn't think about it. But Dave Thompson's a very good writer. He wrote a book with Sylvain, and my friend Syl told me about it. He said, well, why don't you call Dave? And he gave me the number. When I called him up, it turned out that Dave is so professional, he has actually written over 200 books.
Wow.
And when I heard that, I thought, well, he's finished 200 books, and I'm only trying to finish one.
So this is the guy.
Could be the guy. When I first talked to him, actually, he was writing Walter Lohr's book. And so we started working. He's very easy to work with. I had already done a number of interviews, which I sent him, and then we did a few more. And what he did was take it all and put it together into a flow, into a timeline. And then I took it back and I put a lot of the words back into my words. So my wife and I really went over it several times with a fine-tooth comb, so it really said what I said. And I'm very particular about trying to use universal words so that all kinds of people can understand what I'm saying. And, and I'm not a gossip kind of person. I don't like to offend people, so we cleaned up a couple of things here and there.
Right.
We kept it interesting without, being embarrassing.
Yeah, that's got to be a weird line, because you got to have so many great stories that you probably had to like leave on the cutting room floor because not to be a
well,
gossip.
There's some of those,
sort
and also
thing.
I had a very good editor who helped me keep it focused so that I don't have like little vignettes that don't go anywhere. Like, oh, there's a really funny thing about this guy. He said, yeah, but that's 3 sentences.
Right.
You need a story, get in and discuss people. So there's lots of things. I was just talking to my wife yesterday about, I could just do a book of people I know. Paragraphs of like all the fucking crazy oddball people I know,
Yeah. You know what's cool? Yeah, like, because I see you around, like, back when we could be in rock and roll clubs.
Yeah, we used to go places.
And we will again, but you're always there. Like, you're always at the Bowery Electric, like, bands that aren't that big at all, but you're there, and it's always
I'm not
like,
always there. You must be going to the good shows.
Well, you're
I
there.
try to only go to the good shows.
You're there a lot. You're
I
there,
am there a lot.
You're there
I
a
know.
lot, and
Yeah.
it's cool that you stay connected in the sort of like Jesse Malin, down current.
Well, Jesse's
Berkeley,
great, and he
New
really
York.
organizes good shows down there. We've been
Shout
friends a
out
long
Jesse.
time.
Love Jesse.
Actually,
Shout
through this
out
whole
Jesse.
through this whole COVID thing, Jesse's the one person I've actually seen and had dinner with.
Oh yeah.
We sit on the sidewalk, and he's helped me a lot. He helped put it together because the book came out in October, in just around the time of my 75th birthday.
Yeah.
And traditionally, for
birthday.
years, I had a really big birthday party to the point where it got so big that I had to kind of stop having birthday parties for a while. But I did it when I was 71, I think, but always with the idea, well, when I'm 75, I'll have a big party. And then as the book was coming out, I said, we'll have a big book release and birthday party. And then we didn't have any party because nobody's partying right now.
Yeah.
But Jesse put together a really good video tribute that has everybody from Sir Bob Geldof to Iggy Pop to Debbie Harry, all kinds of people saying really nice things about me. And videos that I did, and I did a video interview with Lenny Kaye. And they just put a really great video tribute together. So
That's beautiful.
And Jesse's doing his own live show every week. He's around.
Ehud films it.
I'm the one who mixes it live.
Yeah, well, it's just phenomenal what he's doing, because instead of playing a club here and a club there, he plays the world every day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is that. I'm not a TV, streamer kind of person myself. I find it awkward to look at the little flickering screen.
Yeah.
I was always more into the ambiance of being in a club and meeting people and
Of course.
feeling the people. And my wife's a fashion designer before, for many years, would look at their different clothes and get ideas from the way people put things together. It's just about being out in public, being in places.
Yeah. I'm looking here now, and I see this Warhol picture with Keith Haring, and it makes me think about, like, did you have a lot of interactions like with him and Basquiat and Lou Reed? It brings those characters to mind.
Basquiat, somehow I didn't really know it. It was more of an 80s thing. And I remember, going to an opening when it was Andy Warhol and Basquiat, and I just didn't understand the point of him putting little Mickey Mouses all over these other kind of things. Their art didn't really make a lot of sense to me. They were both kind of good, and like together they were just kind of screwing up each other's work, I thought, But then what do I know,
It kind of had that feel, I think, a little bit, but then it gains value as time passes. And because
well, also, when you say interaction with Andy came to a lot of rock and roll events, but I wouldn't say there was interaction in the sense that, yes, we did, in that we would make eye contact and sort of grin a little, like, oh, you're here, yeah, you're here. And then he'd be so shy. He never said very much.
This guy.
I once had going to visit Yoko Ono, the Dakota building that they live in. It's a very old building. It had one of the very first elevators in New York City after I think the Flatiron might have had the first, but it's what's called a hydraulic elevator, and it's very slow. They pump water into a piston, and the thing rises on a piston, and so it takes a long time. It's very safe because the water it's not like a cable, it can't break. But it takes a while to pump all the water in, and you're sitting there, and this thing is going up and up and up slowly. I got in the elevator one time. It was just me and Andy Warhol going up to a party, a dinner party. I think it was that party.
Wow.
And
yeah.
And he had just done a drawing based on my Sid Vicious picture for an Australian magazine, which I was a little excited about. And so I mentioned, I said, oh, Andy, you did a really nice drawing of my Sid picture. And he's kind of looking at me like scared to open his mouth. And he goes, uh-huh. And I'm like, yeah, I really liked it. It was great. He goes, uh-huh. And he said almost nothing.
The most awkward elevator ride ever.
And it's 9 minutes to go 7 flights. It was really,
and then it was silence for 9 minutes.
Cold sweating and going, are we there yet?
Oh, my God. That's funny.
It was really funny. And then at the party, he and Sean really hit it off.
Yeah, it's the picture is Andy and Sean
away.
and Keith Haring,
and Sean and Andy were talking. I remember at one point, Sean asked... Andy asked Sean to make a drawing or something, so Sean made it like a heart and said, Sean loves Andy or something, and signed it and gave it to him. And so, and Sean said, well, you give me something. And so Andy wrote a big S with a $sign and wrote a little thing, Andy loves Sean or something like that. And he signed it Andy. And 8-year-old Sean passed it back and said, that's just Andy. That could be Andy anybody. Sign Andy Warhol. And I thought, well, 8 years old, you already know.
Chip off the old block, I guess, right?
So later, they were playing. There were some chairs that are like some famous designer. Yoko has some very nice furniture up there. And it's the kind of thing that would be an Art Deco chair, could cost $20,000 or something. Yeah. Very special. And Andy and Sean were playing with magic marker. They were drawing on napkins, and it was going through the napkin onto the Art Deco perfect enamel
$20,000
chair. Yeah. And Yoko saw it, and I was facing them, so she turned so she wasn't embarrassing them and looking at me, and she said, "Is Sean, Sean making trouble?" And he actually wasn't. I think it was Andy who was drawing. And I said, no, but I think his friends might be. And then I said, because Andy and Sean were like talking and having fun and drawing and all this. And I said, I've never seen Andy so vocal and really, communicating, talking to somebody. And Yoko just said, well, he's found somebody on his own age level. There's a lot of, jealousy
funny.
among artists. Or not jealousy, but competition, whatever, anyway.
Right. Healthy competition, I guess. Yeah. That's amazing. What about Keith Haring? Did you have any
Keith was a very nice guy. He, I'd seen him in the, what do you call it, the DJ booth at the area club. There was a really fabulous DJ. His name is Johnny Dynell. He's one of the best around. He still plays some of the biggest parties. And Johnny played at the area club. And the area club had themes, and Johnny played really great music about the theme, but in an intellectually genius way. I mean, you would just stand there and just get thoughts all night. And Keith was one of the people that hung out in the DJ booth there. And I think Madonna was around a lot. I didn't know that at the time, but I remember seeing him because I'd heard like he was this guy who made these cool drawings in the subways. But it's really loud in there, and you don't really talk, very much. But one day we both were riding bicycles, and we happened to pull up at a red light at 7th Avenue and 42nd Street.
That's funny.
Right in the heart of New York City.
Yeah.
And we kind of looked at each other like, oh, you're him. Oh, yeah, you're him. And in those days, he had a pocket where he had his little buttons with his drawings on them. And we said hello, and I said, I'm Bob. He said, he's Keith. And he gave me a couple of his buttons. And I used to carry the John Lennon, the New York City picture. When people started bootlegging it and ripping it off, I started giving it away.
Right.
I used to carry a 4x6 in my pocket, and whenever I met somebody I liked, I would give them a picture.
Yeah.
And so I gave him my picture, and he gave me his drawings, and that's how we met.
That's amazing.
And then I remember getting a book of
Do you
his.
still have the drawing?
The buttons, yeah, I do.
Yeah, the buttons, I mean.
I have a little litho that he gave me. Not too many things, but because it's more like we just talked. It wasn't about getting things.
Right.
But I kind of introduced Yoko because I remember there was the first book of his subway art, and I got that for Sean
Oh, yeah.
to show Yoko and Sean that there was this guy Keith Haring around. And next thing I knew, Andy brought him to a party, and they became friends. And Yoko actually commissioned him, or Yoko's, she knew this curator who commissioned him to do actually some big church altar doors. One of the last things he did. He died way too young.
Yeah, way too young.
He was really nice.
In his 20s still, right? Or maybe
think so.
early 30s?
I remember coming in, it was like, he was actually making the artwork, the clay. He was cutting the clay at Yoko's apartment. And I came in and said, hey, how are you? And it was the wrong question. Cause
he wasn't good.
It wasn't like, okay. I should have said something like, oh, good to see you,
Yeah.
Because 2 weeks later, he passed away.
Oh, no. That's wild.
But, I've lost a lot of friends because I'm getting kind of older. And what I'm trying to realize now is rather than think about the loss, I think about the fantastic times I've had. Writing the book, it just reminded me of all the great people. And this year, particularly with the quarantine where you don't go anywhere, I'm thinking of everywhere I went.
Yeah.
And I can't complain. That we've had, especially me and my wife, we've traveled all over the world. And I'd like to keep doing it. It's funny because I've always been low budget. It's not like I have money to just buy a ticket anywhere, but other people have been buying us tickets for exhibits and jobs and different things. So we end up going. Just before this happened, a year ago, March 8th, we flew to Brazil. There was a museum down there that had a 2-story fantastic exhibit of my John Lennon work. And we spent a week there. We came back March 16th and then locked everything up on the 20th. We left with everybody else, closed the door.
Yeah.
And stopped going anywhere.
Yeah.
So everything's canceled.
Did you get the vaccine?
I did just recently. I got my shot, but
Congrats.
my wife doesn't. So I'm still kind of nervous about her.
Yeah.
As nervous as I was beforehand because
Right.
We can't afford to be sick like that.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people are tired of it, but it's real. You
Yeah.
can't get tired of it and ignore it. It's as real as it was in the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And it is what it is. It's a change of a life. But, I was about to have my own booth in the New York Photo Show, which is a very, very big, big step in my career. And we were like on the verge of getting the tickets to Turin in Italy for a museum exhibit of my work that we were really looking forward to going over there and eating, My son had his ticket to go to Europe. He was going to go and open for Jesse in Europe.
Oh, yeah?
Jesse Mallon was...
I've taped your son a few times.
Go what?
I didn't
I've
know your
taped
son was a
your son
musician.
a few
Yeah.
times.
Well,
Chris.
Chris played, Chris Gruen with a K, K-R-I-S.
Yeah.
He had played with Jesse in Europe a couple of years ago, and this time he was going to be the opening act, a 3-week tour, all over Europe, and he had his ticket, and everything got canceled, And I remember in the spring, a friend of mine kind of bottom-lined it when I mentioned something, and he's a very cynical guy, and he goes, "We all had plans, Bob."
Yeah.
You know?
I had a 2.5-month tour booked with
Yeah.
Greg Dooley.
Europe.
Yeah, well, that's the thing.
Yeah.
We all had plans, Bob. But then
mine were
a
important.
little while after that, I realized that just because everybody else's plans got canceled and we're all in the same boat doesn't make me feel better. You know?
But it does actually bring up this whole thing about you were kind of
Inevitability. Yeah, it's not my fault.
But you were kind of like alluding to like we're just so kind of grateful for the lives we've been having, and it kind of gives you an opportunity to reflect on how much opportunity there actually has been, even just doing something as simple as, hey, let's go to Bowery Electric tonight.
Right.
See a rock show, you know? It's
Right.
like, I think we're never going to take those things for granted as much.
Well, I'll never say never. I mean,
Never say never, you're right.
We'll
my
take a
wife
few
pointed
years.
out. My
Yeah,
wife pointed
we'll
out
take
that,
it for granted a week later, probably.
Well, yeah, because my wife pointed out that the pandemic of 1919 was
1918,
followed by the Roaring '20s.
Here we come.
So I'm ready for that.
I'm ready for that. Let's do that. I love
There's gonna
it.
be a lot of hedonism from people who finally can go outside.
Yeah, we're gonna have to go out. We're gonna have to jump off the wagon when that comes. No, I'm just kidding.
But but that's why I'm not speculating. A lot of people say, "Well, I think by September we'll do this," and I say, "Well, I'll see. You let me know."
yeah,
Because the news seems to change every day,
yeah, it's true.
and
And there's new
call me in the
variations.
call me in the morning and let's see what's happening tomorrow. So
Yeah.
it's just the idea of not making plans.
Yeah.
When you spend a life making plans,
Comes back to the Zen thing.
It does.
You
But
know.
the and be here now is always the great point. But if now is always the same,
Yeah.
it can get a bit tedious.
Yeah.
And
It's literally Groundhog's Day.
yeah, and there's no judge of time because things don't change.
Yeah.
It's not like we did that last week and we're doing this week. It's like so much is the same. Although that said, I'm very lucky. My wife is a great cook. I eat different things every day. I mean, she takes me around the world from Japan to the Mediterranean. I don't know where. I'm eating delicious things all the time. She's great company. She's an artist who makes beautiful work. So I feel very lucky.
That's cool.
And I've been selling some of my pictures just enough to at least pay the rent. So
Bob, you gotta. You saying that makes me go crazy trying to tell you about this NFT thing because
the money making scheme,
bro. You could. It's not a scheme. You could have a Zeppelin plane with the photographs in your body of work. I'm not joking.
Give me the key.
I'm gonna send you a link to some stuff.
a link.
I'm gonna send you a link here and there. But what about that story where
We'll try anything one time. I'm not putting it down. If
No,
it makes
it's
money, I'll do it.
It's huge. It's actually really a huge thing, and we don't have to go into it right now. But it's a massive thing, and particularly for somebody with a body of work such as yours. It's the opportunity presented to us right now is just it's
If
unbelievable.
somebody would pay me dollars for JPEGs, we could do a deal. Yeah.
Many dollars for JPEGs.
Really? Okay.
Many
If
more.
you say so.
I'm not joking. But so, what about Bob Dylan wanting to beat you up? Isn't that?
Oh yeah, there is an undercurrent throughout the book of my many attempts and failures to connect with Bob Dylan.
Right.
He was always a big hero for me.
Yeah.
Interestingly, I describe in the book that the first time I heard him, actually, a friend of mine came over and played a record and said, "You got to hear this guy." And I remember my knees going weak and falling on the floor laughing because it was like, I said, "This guy's not a singer. This is the funniest." I mean, there used to be comedy records in the 50s. And I thought this was like a parody of a singer, the way he sounded. And then
That's
my
so
friend said,
funny.
"Listen to the words."
What
Yeah.
album was
And
that?
Well, his early record.
early
man.
records.
Free Will
It's
one
just
you were laughing at?
Yeah, just the sound of that croaky voice.
It was wild
singing-
back
Nasal,
then.
yeah.
That's when
Nobody
you first
sang-
when you first hear
Even
it.
folk singers didn't sound like that.
Yeah.
You know?
He was over the top with that shit.
He was just, yeah. And then my friend said, "Listen to the
That
words."
Dylan shit.
No, I
he
love
does.
him. Don't get me wrong, of course.
Well, my friend said, "Listen to the words," and that changed everything. I started listening to the words, and they became, in many ways, my words. Words that I live by, in a sense of not instructions but mental ideas. Like, I don't know. I saw it online the other day. What's your favorite line? And I thought, well, the hypnotic splattered mist is slowly lifting. And there's a lot of Dylan lines that when I hear the words, every time I hear the words, I think different things.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, what Bob Dylan's all about is what you think when you hear those words. He puts combinations of words together that every time you hear them, you think different things. And that's the fun of it. It's just those things you think about. Not what he's saying, and not him, certainly, but what you think about. But the fact that in my life I've met so many heroes, I mean, Joe Strummer, John Lennon, I mean, amazing people, and never connected with Bob Dylan in that kind of way. And it's funny, the encounters I put in the book where eventually he wanted to beat me up because I took pictures without permission at a concert.
He still will do that if you do that at a concert.
And well, no, it made me see it in a different respect again, in the personal, that he is a person. I did it because what he was doing I felt was a very important, newsworthy event. The fact that Bob Dylan was playing this secret Rolling Thunder tour. With this cockamamie band of...
T-Bone Burnett was in that band, too.
T-Bone Burnett, Rob Stoner, Scarlett O'Hara, what's his name? Mick Ronson. Joan Baez came by. It was a cockamamie bus full of friends who were drinking heavily and thinking that was a really good idea and having a lot of fun. But it was kind of private, and Bob had hired Ken Regan to be the exclusive photographer. And it was the first time they actually searched people that you couldn't bring a camera into the theater, and I took that as a challenge.
Of course.
And overcame that. And
how did you overcome it?
Well, I put cameras in my boots. I put a lens in the hood of my jacket.
Wow.
I actually literally taped film to my arm. And then just kind of walked in like that, and didn't get, they didn't find it. I did 7 different shows like that.
That's
It wasn't like I
amazing.
did it once. And I did the
You're
cover
an assassin.
I did the cover of Cream, and then I sent them out. It was the cover of Cream magazine and The Enemy in England, and it got worldwide press.
You get shit for
And-
it because of that?
Yeah.
And he was very angry about that. And
Like, who put those
and-
photos out without my approval?
yeah. And then when I met him, it was just, I had no idea that he was even aware.
I thought he caught you at the show that they got upset.
No, it's better
Now
than
you're
that.
like bootlegging.
It's better
it.
than that.
It's better than that because first of all, I was not really aware that he personally would be involved in something like that.
Yeah.
And so personally that he was trying to control his image, and here I was, and because I was like the only one,
Yeah.
because he really did control it, and
Yeah.
I didn't just get some pictures to take home for my high school buddies. I was on the cover of major magazines around the world.
Right. So he had a point.
He had a point.
Let's face it.
Yeah, no, he did. And so I said when I thought
Fire
about
the
it,
publicist.
when I
Yeah.
thought about it later, I did feel bad, and I didn't.
Yeah.
I don't do that. I didn't do that again ever.
Right.
I was in Berlin and in a taxi. Because I was at a Rolling Stone concert, ran into the publicist, mentioned that I was going to Europe. He said he was going to Europe with Bob Dylan and that they were playing Berlin. And I'm such a fan. I mean, I saw Bob Dylan at West Point. I saw him all over the place around New York. And the idea of Bob Dylan in Berlin and the fact that I was going to be in Germany and could actually go, I thought, wow, this would be special. And I said, I'm going to Germany. And he said, come to this hotel. I'll get you a ticket, a photo pass. And so I get to Berlin, I go to the hotel, and they had switched hotels. They weren't there. So I got in a cab to go to the venue, to the theater, and find a publicist and deal with it that way. And I'm in the cab going there, and I see a bodyguard. I recognize the bodyguard that I had just been with in Japan, like 2 months earlier. This guy, Paddy Callahan. The Callahan brothers, famous bodyguards.
Irish.
Irish, big. They handled the Rolling Stones.
Paddy
the Who.
Callahan.
No, these were tough
He will
guys.
kick your ass.
His brother.
That's my Irish accent. He will kick your ass. It's terrible.
Well, his brother was the head of security for the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
I mean, it was serious security. Anyway, I saw Paddy walking across the street, and he's with these 2 hippie guys. And then I realized that one of the hippie guys was Bob Dylan. And the other one, I think, was like another bodyguard or maybe one of the musicians or something. But I just saw Bob Dylan, and I got excited, and I had to tell the cab driver in German. By the time I got him to figure out that I wanted to stop, we're half a block away. He stops. I jump out of the cab. I'm coming down the block towards Bob Dylan and my friend Patty. And he saw me coming, and Bob Dylan kind of turns around like he must have thought some German guy is going to walk up to him. Yeah. And I'm looking at him. He's looking at me. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know why I jumped out of the cab. It's just,
instinct.
I was a fan.
Yeah,
it was Bob Dylan, and there I was, And so I looked at Patty. I said, "Hey, Patty, how are you doing?" He goes, "Oh, Bob, good to see you again. You're coming to the show." I said, "Yeah, I'll see you tonight." And Bob Dylan got kind of bored immediately, and he started walking away. And Patty said, I got to work, I'll see you later. And he started walking away. And I don't know if Dylan said, who's that? Or Patty said, Bob? And when he heard my name, he turned around and he says, I know you. You've been taking pictures at all the shows.
Oh,
and I read in his book that he had hurt his foot. He had a cane, like a really nice cane with a big silver head on it. And he's waving at it and saying, I always said I was going to beat you up when I met you. And I was like, you're going to beat me up? Like, what? And I started looking at Patty, my friend, like, you're going to protect me, right? I know you're working with him.
Paying the bills,
because the other guy is kind of, hey, we're going to fight. And he's kind of moving in with Bob. And I just kind of started saying, well, I always tried to take good pictures, and he was saying you didn't, get permission. I said, well, you didn't give permission. We tried to get permission. I said, but I felt... I said I tried to get really good pictures. And it was funny because there was a picture just before the tour, at the beginning when they were all drunk. There's a picture of him and Patti Smith, and he's wearing a striped T-shirt. And I know who took the picture. And I was there kind of bummed because we were out on the sidewalk and couldn't get in. It was at the bitter end.
I know that picture, yeah.
Right, with him and Patti Smith.
Yeah.
And he's drunk, and he apparently he didn't like the picture. So, but I know about it because, like I say, I couldn't get in to take a good picture. And when I was saying I always tried to get good pictures, and he said, "Well, what about that picture of Patti Smith?" I said, "That wasn't mine. Chuck Pullen took that picture. It's not mine."
That's funny.
And he's kind of waving the cane and looking at me, and then they finally walk away. And I was kind of stunned because the way I always thought of it is that I met God and He wanted to kill me.
Right.
And in a funny way, it really, two ways. First of all, never meeting Bob Dylan let me have the role of a fan.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of people, fans, idolize somebody, Bruce Springsteen or whatever. I met Bruce. He's a very nice guy.
Lou Reed.
Lou Reed, he's not still a nice guy.
He was. He could be very nice.
I think he put up a front of being a curmudgeon.
I think that was a lot of front.
Because I know other friends who talk about how warm and wonderful.
No, he was
sweet,
very warm and wonderful.
But I've saw him many times. Yeah. Well, I saw him many times when he wasn't so.
Yeah, no, I've dealt with him that way too.
But he was a neighbor, and I knew him a long time.
Yeah,
in fact, the last time I saw him, we had a really kind of a warm goodbye. But never connecting with Bob Dylan let me be that kind of sycophant fan. Like, I think he's fantastic, and I never got beyond the pillar,
And what a great story, though. I mean, are you happy with that story now?
Yeah,
in
well, because
hindsight?
it was an interaction, like any fan. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I met him and he talked to me.
But
he said he wanted to kill me, but I talked to the guy. You know what I mean? I have that same experience.
Yeah.
So that's what I meant. Like, I didn't meet everybody, and I maintained that kind of almost idolization of somebody. Although I don't idolize him, I like his.
Did you ever photograph him again? Or that was it?
Well, I've taken pictures at concerts where he's on stage and I'm in the audience. Yeah,
I saw him in China when he
but
played
not
Beijing.
not
officially.
Not officially, and not. There's some pictures on my website. If you look at my website, bobgruen.com.
Promote.
And you can do a search for Bob Dylan. I've seen him many times over the years, and actually, I usually get some picture or other. But
Dylan and Prince are some of the artists
I remember
that
I
to the end would go after anyone trying to take photos at the show or posting video after.
Certain people are like
shut
super sensitive.
I got
within
kicked
5
out of a
minutes.
Prince concert.
Oh, Prince!
for
you don't want.
taking
He had
my phone
bodyguards.
out.
They would break the camera.
They tried to get my camera off me, and I wouldn't give it to him, so they kicked me out.
Yeah, I got kicked out.
And then I got
kicked
I
out of
went
a Prince
right back
concert
in.
because the girlfriend I was with took a picture.
Yeah.
And I got punched.
Yeah.
Prince was pretty serious about that.
Yeah.
Elvis Costello too.
Really?
Not
Certain
me,
people
Bob. You
just
can
don't
take
like
a picture of me anytime you want.
Okay.
What else? I don't want to keep you forever.
Yeah.
We've been going for.
All right.
I just had one question.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
I live 4 blocks away, so it's easy.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, we've been going for an hour and a half or something like
a
that,
little
right?
more maybe.
Yeah.
Everything unrelated, everything you described about yourself when he asked you what makes you like a good photographer, all I keep hearing
great
is how
photographer.
much you hustle,
Yeah.
work. It's like you keep chasing after it non-stop, which is something I relate to, where I feel like you weren't doing it for the money. You were just, can I take photos? And I got to go here, I got to go there, whether they were paying you or not.
True. I mean, a lot of times I was.
Point.
I did build up an archive.
Right.
I
So
was
you were
aware
almost a
sometimes.
bootlegger
I was
in a way.
aware a number of times that I was taking pictures that I felt were important that people didn't know about yet. You know, things like Rock Scene magazine we didn't get paid for, but we were creating a history, and now people are making documentaries out of that history.
Yeah, about everything you did.
And so, and it's always been very low budget. So it's not like you take a picture like a fashion photographer gets $35,000 or something. I get
Exactly.
35,
Exactly. And
no thousands.
You got one.
You know? And so you have to sell a lot of pictures at $35 if you got a phone bill of $175. You know, and that's not even your rent yet.
I'm going to
So-
try not to bring up NFTs again.
And,
No, the money, yeah.
And what the young kids who might be listening don't know is that, you know, you would have to take the photos. You didn't know what they looked like. You have to
Oh,
go
right.
home, develop. And that was my question is, what do you remember, like a show where you were like, oh, my God, I can't believe I got these photos, and you got home and they weren't there?
Well, there was a Bob Dylan moment where I didn't have film in the camera, if that's what you
Yeah,
mean.
something like that. Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
But yes, it does happen. There was, especially with the Olympus cameras that I used, for some reason the speed setting was right on the same thing as the lens mount.
Oh, okay.
These are words I haven't used in a long time. Everything got so automatic. So sometimes if you change your lens, you might accidentally, like a wide angle to a normal lens, you might accidentally hit the speed setting.
Right.
And if you're using a flash, like at a press party, you'd have to use a flash because you're in total darkness. I started out a purist. I didn't like a flash, but you had to use it for a party. But it would only synchronize with the frame
Right speed,
at a
right.
60th of a second or less. At a 60th of a second, you get a flash that filled the whole frame. If you accidentally click that to 125, half of the picture would be exposed and half wouldn't. And you'd have a picture of two people with their arm around each other, and this guy's not here. And when you woke up, and when you went home, you pulled that out of the developing tank, and you saw half pictures,
That's a bummer.
and you had paid to be at that party and get both of those people in the picture. That was a problem. That happened occasionally. Luckily not often enough, but I mean often enough that I remember like 3 times when it was tragic, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
All right.
But yeah, I mean all kinds of accidents happen. And it's just mostly that it was such a low budget thing that I had to work a lot. You know?
Yeah, no, it sounded crazy.
And I had to license the pictures. I mean, luckily I got good at it where I met people in Europe and working with Rock Scene. With Lisa, I got to know people in England, which then when I went there, I ended up actually going to France and meeting people there. Because in order to get a photo pass, you needed an assignment. So if you got an assignment from Rolling Stone, then your pictures had to go to Rolling Stone. Now, I did a lot of work for Cream magazine, too. But if you got an assignment for them, they would go to Cream. Now, Cream was a domestic magazine. So if I got an assignment for Cream, I could also sell pictures to France and to England and to Germany. But if you get an assignment for Rolling Stone, that was an international magazine, you couldn't sell to somebody else. And you get the same money. So if you're only getting $35 from one magazine, you're not even paying for the film and developing. So I needed to have more international outlets just to pay for things.
And last time before we tried to book you on the podcast, you said, let me wait till my Greenday book comes out.
Oh, that was a while ago.
Yeah. And
So the Greenday book
the last
came
thing.
out.
Yeah.
It's gorgeous. I wish I should have brought one with me.
What's that called?
It's called Greenday, Photographs of Bob Gruen, I think.
Okay.
But it's a really nice book. It was put together with the band. Billy and Mike and Trey all put comments in the book. We got a great guy, Avi, who did kind of graffiti cartoons all through the book, so it's very Greenday, teenage-ish. Not the formal kind of book I usually would have. It's much more informal in that sense. But it got to the point where I met Greenday in 97, I think, for Jesse. Jesse was opening. The Degeneration was going to Europe, and we were drinking, and Jesse said, come to Europe. We're opening for Greenday. And we
That's
did.
a pretty good Jesse right there, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you got him a little bit.
Yeah, well, anyway, I don't know. One night
Can
in
we
the
hear
Cedar,
that again?
we were in the Cedar Bar, and he was going, it's going to be a great tour. And me and Elizabeth ended up, we didn't go from Belfast to Prague, as he suggested, but we did go from London to Paris. We did about 3 or 4 dates, and that's when we met Greenday and got to know them. And then time flies, and all of a sudden, a couple of years ago, I realized I've known him 25 years.
Not funny.
And I never expected it would be that long, but then we put it together as a book. Billy liked the idea a lot. Billy did a very nice handwritten forward. That was one of those things that was so nice. We printed the page he wrote it on. We didn't, type it out. It's in his handwriting.
Oh, that's cool.
And it came out in September, year and a half ago, September 19. But then last spring, they were supposed to carry it on tour. And they started their tour in Singapore. Well, they started canceling their tour in Singapore, and then it was going to start in Asia and go through Russia and Europe and get here to America last summer. And unfortunately, the whole thing's canceled. I did see that they have a schedule now coming back, I think, in May or June, again starting in Europe. It's a bit smaller than the last year's plan, but they're supposed to be here in New York August 4th. But, we watch the news, and it changes every day. So I'm not in a rush to get into a crowded room. I feel lucky I got a vaccine. I don't know if that means, how much protection that gives you.
Yeah. Eventually, you got to live, though,
Well, yeah, but
carefully and all.
I'm living carefully. I like my wife. I'm really comfortable being at home with her.
Yeah.
I'm not in a rush to get into a crowded room just to be there.
Right.
Like, I don't need to be in a restaurant just because you're allowed to be. And somebody said, when are you coming back? I said, when I can go to an opening or event and somebody can introduce me to somebody and I can shake their hand, I'll be happy to do it.
Yeah.
Because that's what I miss. I miss meeting people.
Yeah.
Most of my life, I don't advertise. I don't get calls, cold calls like, we're looking for a photographer.
Right.
I meet people at events.
You hustle.
I hustle, and now there's no events. There's no meeting people.
Yeah.
So that's very different.
Have you heard of the app called Clubhouse yet?
She says yes.
Yeah, we were just talking about that yesterday.
It's not the same, obviously, but just in this time, it is conversational, which is interesting from other social medias.
Right.
Where you actually talk in a room full of people. And it's actually, there is a room all about NFTs there called NFT Tips.
Getting back there. Is that where you found out about it?
Yeah, I go in there a lot. Citizen Cope is in there a lot. Shout out Clarence. And just artists are learning about it. Because honestly, once you're going to dive into it, I'm pretty sure.
Don't you have to get invited or something?
No, I could send you an invite to Clubhouse. Yeah, easy. No worries. Yeah, but it might be something fun to get into for now until the world opens up a little bit more. Kind of give you some of that networking feeling, because a lot of people are doing a lot of networking and hustling in that realm. I know it's not the same, but just as a for now type of thing.
I've done a couple online things. I do a lot of Zoom meetings, when people ask me to, galleries and things like that. It was interesting the way it worked out with the National Arts Club. National Arts Club is something I've known about all my life. It was founded in the 1800s. It's a austere, revered, hallowed halls, carved wood panels place. And last February, a year ago, we had made a date that I was going to do a book reading. When the book came out last September, I was supposed to do a book reading, and I was really looking forward, like National Arts Club. This was prestigious,
Yeah.
And then it was canceled, of course, like everything else. And then by the fall, we were talking more, and they said that we would do something online, which is not the same thing as being in the hallowed hall,
Right.
with the hors d'oeuvres and everything.
Yeah.
This guy keeps looking for food.
Yeah, no. Well,
I'm hungry right now, to be honest. I haven't eaten anything today.
I will say that
Let's go to Brazil to eat. Let's go to Italy to eat.
A big part of the lifestyle.
I need
is
some food right
well,
now.
A big part of the lifestyle is, since I'm not getting paid a lot, I
Yeah,
do get
it's to
perks, and
hang
out.
I like to eat well. And,
Bob, every time you say you're not getting paid a lot, it drives me nuts. Because you're about to get paid so much, man.
Okay,
I swear.
you listening?
But
You listening?
we actually vibed about it. She gets it.
Okay.
She gets it.
But anyway, where was I?
The book
The
reading.
food. The
Yeah.
food.
So of course, the in-person reading got canceled, and then they started talking about doing something online, and then we scheduled it. We did it in January, and at the National Arts Club, being an old, revered place, the capacity of the room is about 225 people.
Yeah.
Online, we had over 1,100.
Right.
Nice.
So I got more than 4 times as many people by not being there
Yeah.
as I did, from if I'd actually been at the place. So online, it seems to work on many levels for many people.
Yeah.
There's a university in Hawaii that I've done some talks every 5 or 6 years. When they change, a new class comes in, I've gotten flown out there twice already. And they fly us to Hawaii, and I give a talk, and I meet all these people.
Some good food.
And this time, the guy said, "Can you do something online?"
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, that's not the same thing as a ticket to Hawaii. I can still talk to the students, and we'll get the same information.
What about
but
my pineapple?
I was surfing.
Where's my pina colada?
Well, I actually got on a surfboard when I went out there for the one time.
Did you get up?
I did.
I've gotten up once on a surfboard.
I did it. Oh, and it's very frustrating because I had a whole day. I had this guy named Igor. He's not a Hawaiian name, but this guy taught me, and he put me in the waves, and I was doing great. And the guy was taking pictures of me, and we got back, and he said, "Do you want the pictures?" I said, "Yeah, I'm coming to get the pictures." And I get over to the pictures. Oh, we accidentally deleted it. Sorry. Oh, tomorrow. We'll get some more tomorrow. Of course, the next day it didn't happen the same way.
Yeah, surfing's a tough nut to
I have
crack.
imaginary pictures of me surfing, but Elizabeth saw it. I was standing. I got up there. I did.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Actually, not only just standing.
You gotta pop up.
Well, the thing was not just getting up, but then I felt in control. I was actually doing it, and I was like, "Oh my God, I'm actually doing this."
Yeah.
And I had that cool feeling.
I know that feeling.
I'm really doing this.
Yeah.
It was amazing because, if you don't do it, you don't realize how the wave holds the board. I was standing on it, and it was just there like a solid thing.
Yeah.
I was great. It was really great.
Yeah. Your whole life is that's like a metaphor for your whole life, Bob. Are you going to do an audio book?
I am.
You should, because I heard you read some of it, and it was great, even that.
Well, I just got a contract. Publishing moves really slowly. But I've gotten a couple of emails that says they will be in touch to make a schedule. And as soon as they do, I'll gargle a lot, and then I'll read my book.
Get that done. Get that
it
done.
out there.
I don't know. Today, I'm just like, my throat feels a bit under the weather here.
Yeah, well, we're going to wrap this up. But
Yeah,
thank you
been
so
amazing.
much, man. This has
Thank
been
you. I hope you edit
a
this
wonderful
into something that
journey.
makes sense.
We are not editing it. This is it's going to go just like this, the whole
well,
thing.
somebody's got half a night to watch this.
Oh, yeah.
People will watch.
They will.
Okay.
They'll love it. Do you want to guide people to social media or anything?
Well,
or?
BobGruen.com, that's my website.
Go there.
If you want to buy prints, MorrisonHotelGallery.com. It's not a hotel. It's just called Morrison Hotel Gallery.
Yeah.
And they're a great gallery, and they have hundreds of my pictures on their site and thousands on my site.
Yeah.
Any picture you see out there is available to buy.
Iconic.
We got loads of books. The new book, Right Place, Right Time, my autobiography. But we also
Wonderful
have
book.
Rock Scene, which is my monograph, and the Greenday book, and a New York Dolls book, and a John and Yoko book. I got about 15 books, actually.
And a line of NFTs coming soon.
Okay.
All right, y'all.
Thank
How
you,
I'm into it. I feel, by the way, thank you to Michael Dorf.
Yeah.
Thank you to
for
City
letting
Winery.
Shout
us
out
come
Shlomo,
here.
Michael Dorf,
And,
City Winery.
And for having the City Winery, for inventing the City Winery in the first place. I followed Michael's career since he was at the Knitting Factory down on Houston Street.
Yeah.
And it's just great, the music that he brings to people and the venues that he brings. And being here in this empty room, I feel like kids playing in the adult world. You know, like, wow, look, we got the city winery all to ourselves. This is like so cool.
There is nobody in the building but us. Right?
They let us hang out here all the time.
Amazing.
They gave me a whole office in the back with all my artwork in it. And I got an art show up in the upstairs if you guys want to see.
It's a bar open?
No, there's no employees.
Really?
There's no employees.
No, but it's a really nice because it actually is bigger than it feels. It feels pretty intimate.
No, that's big.
But it's all unobstructed views.
400
the old one had all those pillars and everything.
They're calling it 400 or 500, but you could put 1,000 people
Standing?
in here.
You could put 1,500.
You could put 1,500 people in here.
If they're all friends and they're not worried about getting
yeah.
sick,
Yeah.
definitely.
Pre-COVID.
But yeah, as far as sightlines, because the other one had that whole VIP section that I thought was kind of funny. Like the VIPs had the worst seat in the house. They were all the way on
side.
the end. You couldn't see anything over there.
The sound was terrible.
Yeah, I remember Lou got pissed off when they tried to send him up there. He'd be like, I don't know.
Yeah, he wanted to sit in the middle. Yeah, they never sat him up there again.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. But this room looks fantastic.
Yeah, it's beautiful. One of the nicest music venues I've seen.
You know, and the thing is that everybody's so frustrated about what they're allowed or not allowed. To me, it's just common sense. The disease is horrible.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, many people seem to have a mild case and get better, and it doesn't matter. But if that's not you, then you can have the worst case.
Yeah.
Because A, people die more than from other diseases. But B, what worries me is that so many long-haul people who just don't die but don't get better.
Right.
And they live a really compromised life. I have several friends who have lost functioning, brain problems, heart problems, and that's what I'm trying to,
avoid.
Yeah, well, thank
it's
God you got
hard
the vaccine.
You got to keep reminding yourself it really is serious. It really is happening. It's not okay that even though a year later it's the same as it was, and we just have to be careful.
Word, for sure. Yeah, I got lucky with it. I actually got it, but it was, a few days of a flu for me, and I had to quarantine it for 2 weeks or whatever. But, and I definitely felt a little bit weirder than a normal thing getting back on track with my running and this, that, and the other. There's definitely is a residual thing, I think. But I'm fortunate, but a lot of people, if you're immune compromised or older.
Yeah, I know a few people who got sick for a couple of days and then they got better. I'm a little jealous. Does that? But that.
Yeah, because I got the antibodies now.
But then, do you have antibodies for all of the varieties? Like who's safe?
Who knows?
Who knows, Bob? We're not going to crack this code right here.
I know. And the thing is, there's all these other diseases and so on. So it's just they kind of put for a whole year, they put this fear of deadly disease in
there
your
is
mind.
that. I feel like we have to I agree with what you're saying
Because
about
there always was that
be
fear.
careful, but death is not a new concept, and
you can still get hit by a car.
Right, on some level,
careful walking up here.
On some level, you got to kind of just get on with it too. Obviously, don't be an idiot about it and all that you're saying, but at another level too, there's been so much fear, programming happening that I think a lot of people are traumatized by that, and to the point where that will also be something that a lot of people have to overcome. I think. But
how soon are people going to really want to hug and kiss again?
I want to hug and kiss right now.
I know they want to.
None of you guys, though. Actually,
but how soon will people feel comfortable doing that?
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah.
We'll
see, but hopefully we'll be back, and hopefully I'll run into you at the Bowery Electric before we know it, man.
Yeah,
that's what I'm hoping for, because that will be I'll smile wide and go, remember when?
Yeah,
and hopefully it won't be long.
We had a lot of good times there. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man.
I'll be there on Thursday. Jesse
thanks for coming.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Really appreciate it. This was great.
Yeah,
okay.
Amazing.
All right. Peace, everyone. Hi, this is Joseph Arthur. Thanks for checking out Come to Where I'm From. Please support us on Patreon, patreon.com/Come to Where I'm From. We are an independent podcast, and any contributions you can make are greatly appreciated.